Okay, so we spoke last time, and I was reflecting after our conversation, and there are actually two things that really stood up for me. So the first thing is, you guys had this insane transformation as a couple and individually. And you speak about it with such a modesty, like it's nothing. Like it's the most natural, easy, absolutely to be expected development. I work with a lot of women. I can tell you, and I see a lot of couples. It's not. It's just not. How do you feel when I reflect back to you? You're so modest about the transformation you had.
I feel surprised. Like sometimes my gauge for like what's exceptional or what's normal or what's good is I find that is one of not a blind spot, but an area that I don't have a lot of good calibration for. Sometimes I'll do something and think it's normal and it might be exceptional or I expect something of others. And that's something I'm still trying to orient to. So when you say like it's truly exceptional, not that many people do it, I notice a little bit of a surprise, or like, surely I'm sure there's so many other people who have done this, I guess is the first thing that comes to my mind.
And I think for me, a slightly different response, which is that you're totally right. It was exceptionally hard. And there's an aversion in me to suffering over long periods of time, even if that suffering is small. And so to me, it was always easier, instead of like having these little patterns that would lead us to suffering over time, just over and over and over, it was easier to work exceptionally hard in the front end to fix these things and to figure out what was going on and to try to get it all worked out. So while it was incredibly difficult, for me, it was also way easier than the idea of like suffering over my future from unresolved patterns. Like that sounds like an absolute nightmare. You know, that's so much worse.
What you just said is like, I
Yes.
choose to suffer for a few
100%.
months intensively. But I don't want to
100%.
suffer for the next 20 years.
100%.
And you know, the thing is, I think the oldest client I've had was 66-year-old. And when she would look back and she was like, Juliana, one whole marriage was a disaster just because I didn't know to attend it, how to speak. I just, we were completely like, we had zero awareness. And if you look back, this is like the majority of your life. So this is I think, Evan, what you say is the importance of the lifetime, which is huge. And I have to tell you, even you understanding this is exceptional. Other thing is, and this is where I really adore you have so much this healthy masculine, which is, I have a problem, I'm going to fix it. Like, it sucks, but I'm just going to go through that.
Yes. And sometimes the problems are in me, and sometimes the problems are between us, and sometimes the problems are in her. And the hard part is being able to discern honestly which is which. And not just saying it's always her.
It's very easy to look outside and say my partner, it doesn't matter man or woman, but just like my partner, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, they're too much, they're too little, or whatever. And I have to tell you, there's so many women who look in the mirror and they're like, I'm the problem, where sometimes they aren't the problem as well. And men as well, like men as well. You're looking back at a few, as you say, like sprints of intensive figuring out in conversations. And I wonder, this is for your nervous system, this is like a huge load, like an overload, pretty much. How are you having those conversations, those just a time while figuring out? How are you literally coping with this?
For me, it involved reducing every other stimulus that I could to a great degree. So I went to France and just hung out on a farm with very little traffic, noise, people, stimulation. That helped a lot, I would say. And that might not be a solution for everyone. I don't think that's the key that changes everyone's lock, but for me, having more quiet definitely allowed my system to figure things out better.
Okay with like high capacity, like long hours of things, and whether it's work or events or sports or activity or conversation, I don't have as much of a capacity problem for maxing out. Like if there's something that spikes me into like dysregulation, I might need a few minutes or a little bit of time to come back to regulation, but I tend to have the batteries or capacity for a lot.
You know what I'm hearing? So you basically, if I'm getting it right, you're taking your skill set from your career in business and you're applying it to, this is how I'm dealing with my nervous system, with our conversations, with whatever is happening. I'm okay with a lot.
Yes.
I hear you on that. But and the other thing which stood, just reflecting from our first conversation, the other thing that stood for me, I asked you at the end, like, guys, how did you reconnect? And you started talking about, we had a lot of intense conversations. You're taking a breath.
There were a lot, and they were intense.
And you know what's interesting? I was kind of, probably, expectation is never a good idea, but I was kind of expecting to hear something romantic.
Yeah,
And I
not going to be in many love books, love stories. Then the time.
Yeah, it's and that's really interesting because the whole way you approached it. I mean, first, Evan, I know a little bit. You were leading the whole time. You were leading from the beginning to the end, like all the way through. And that's why I'm just not buying on the idea, like with avoidant men, I'm not buying it. But the thing is, you were leading, and from what I just noticed as a side observer to that, you approached it in such a structured, logical way. You take a problem and you start like organizing and dissolving and planning and just really taking it into smaller chunks and going like in one loop, another loop, which is a very structured approach, a highly
Yes.
emotional topic.
Yes, that was my approach. But yes,
Your
like
approach.
he's the exact opposite. That was actually part of, like, in France, like in the middle, we'd have a conflict and we'd have a resolution, and like his next step would be like, okay, we're just gonna let things go and see how things settle, and I'm gonna go meditate and think about it and read books. And I'm like, when's our next conversation? What? It's been 3 days. Like, I have a limited time here. Like, what is next? What's happening? And so we have very different approaches to conflict, to conversations, to what feels good to our nervous systems. Like,
How to solve problems.
How to solve problems. Like, what we have found is so much of our conflict is because we are complete and total opposites on almost any spectrum you can create. Like, make a spectrum, like ice cream. Like, I want cookies and chocolate and he wants fruit. It does not matter. There is a spectrum. We are on the opposite ends of it. And what we found is so often both were very strong polar opposites. And a lot of what we uncovered and where things started to feel better is we would pull each other more to the middle. We would find solutions or ways of being in conflict or ways of thinking about things that, instead of it being all the way out here for me or him being like, no, this is how it's done, we would find something in the middle that had flexibility that felt a lot healthier and then was better for both of us as individuals and then together.
And I think, to speak a little bit to what you were saying, I think she was saying that I took a structured approach. What was actually true in the situation was that Erin had the structured approach in terms of like, let's get this done, right? Like, let's figure things out. And what was happening on my end was, when the problem would come to me, I was trying to structure it in a way to figure it out and to break things apart and to question this and question that and figure things out. So both of those things were happening at the same time. That's what I picked up.
Yeah, because I mean, we learned last time, you said, I need time, quiet time to process, like clear need, right? And in the same time, Erin is like, but
because
when
I
are we gonna
process
speak
verbally
again?
and out loud.
So Erin, how are you feeling? Like, you were in France, you've never been in France, you don't know anyone there. You're together, like not many people around, not that many. And then he's like, I need to meditate and I need a little bit of time. And then you go like, how are you dealing with that?
So for the first several weeks, I felt good and positive and hopeful because we'd have these conflicts. And I think I mentioned this last time. It wasn't a conflict where we were fighting and then we got disconnected. Every time we'd have a conflict, we'd work through challenges or issues or overcome problematic relating habits, or I'd see something in myself that I had been blaming him for and it had come from me. So new awarenesses, new ways of communicating something. I didn't know. One example would be like, I had asked him to read a book. He had committed to doing it. And when I noticed after several days he wasn't reading it, I didn't know how to follow up without being, nagging or being a mother or being like, are you doing this? And I'm like, wait, that's not feminine, but it's important to me. So trying to find these different ways to relate, right? So in the first several weeks, I was hopeful and positive because I was like, we're making progress. But then as time went by, I was like, we're making progress and things feel so good and so connected. But there was this huge element that was missing for me where I was like, but we're still like platonic. And it just feels like there's this huge element that was missing. So as that continued and we were getting closer and more connected, but then there wasn't like the physical part was missing, I started to feel more anxious and confused. So it was kind of like it was good, and it was starting to be like, this is confusing to me as well and unresolved. So both.
You know what's interesting to me? How do you, because I hear you what you explain, and it's normal. You need the safety, and you're not getting it like a confirmation, and then you start spiraling, which is hard. How did you cope with that?
What's interesting though is at the farther along the timeline we go, the more I would have challenges and would struggle to cope with them, the more I realized and had safety to be able to bring them to him. And I would be able to share, like, I realized that without physical touch or connection or this, like, I'm noticing this is how I'm feeling. So whereas before I would push things down and it would come out in all sorts of passive aggressive ways, as I started to be more in touch with what I was feeling and my frustrations and allow them, then that would allow me to take it to him and go, I'm not asking you to solve it. I don't know what to do with this. Can we look at this together? So it became more of over time, it has become more of a collaborative exploration when I'm trying to deal with things.
You know what? I was asking because as a relationship starts progressing, you're still the same person. You still get anxiety. You still, same stuff like before. But the way you start dealing with it as the connection gets better is different. And what I heard, Evan said, like, I'm not well. So he was knowing what was happening. Do you see the huge difference now? Like in what you just said, I feel safer to talk about that. Obviously, he feels safer to have me around while I'm the way I am. And this is really the safety that underlining we create as in the course of the process.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think we would both agree, and the reason we had a laugh is because like there's also this thing when you look from the energetic standpoint at relationships, right? And oftentimes what we've seen, and this popped up with us, was like when one person is pointing to the other person and saying, this person is the problem, they both agree that this person is the problem. What we've seen pretty consistently is whenever there's pointing like that going on, there's actually a lot of hidden issues in the person that is pointing that are not being acknowledged because they're pointing to this person as the problem. And so what came up for us was like there was this energetic dynamic of one of us was the fixed one and one of us was the broken one, was the idea that was happening in the relationship. And surmounting that and bringing us both up to an even footing was probably one of the biggest tipping points that we had in our relationship. So the not well joke is mostly because we laugh looking back at those big conversations. But as soon as we got rid of that illusion that one person was fixed and one person was broken, and usually this ends up being the person who's fixed is the anxious attachment one who's just like, I'm just showing up to love you and you're just running away. Can't you see I love you? I'm here no matter what. And that's being represented as I'm the fixed one and I'm totally good. It's you that's broken. So when we got to see through that and bring back I don't know what you'd call that, like the scales became equal again, that tipped so much in the favor of us connecting, like reconnecting in a beautiful way.
There was an interesting night in France where I had noticed, like, throughout the course of our relationship, was aware that I was the one that would always bring the problems. I noticed this. I noticed we're not talking. I noticed it's been 3 days. I would like to have more words of affirmation. Like, just so super, like, I'm the one who's working on this relationship. I'm the one who cares. And then I wouldn't hear things from him. There was...
Meaning I wouldn't bring any problems.
Yep, he wouldn't bring any problems to me. Yeah. So, in my mind, I think I'm doing great. I'm crushing it. Yeah. I am so good. I am so good that he doesn't even have a single complaint about me. Because if he did, he would say it. Because that's what people do. That's in my mind. It's so easy to say the problems. So I was thinking he would say the problems if there was any. But there were none. So I obviously thought I was crushing the game. And then there was an evening in France where he shows up with a list. And he's like, I have some things to share with you. And I got like a year's worth of all of the things that had never been said in one conversation. So I got to sit there and do what no human nervous system, I think, is meant to experience and get a year's worth of grudges and complaints and noticings in one go. That was like 6 or 7 hours of sitting there, and like he was fine. Everything finally came up about.
And that's when the reason this came up is because I ditched the idea that I was the problem. I was like, no, I'm not the fucking problem. Excuse my language. Like, that's not the truth here. And as soon as I could admit that, then came into my awareness this gigantic list of 15-ish big interrelating things that she was doing that were just like, no, no, absolutely not. And so as I tipped the scale and just became like, no, we're good. We're equal. Then that's when I became aware of all these things. It wasn't even like I was aware of them and repressing them at first. It was as soon as we got rid of that energetic imbalance and one person is fixed and one person is broken, as soon as we got rid of that idea, all of those awarenesses came in for me. So I came in with a list of 15 awarenesses. Like, and here's the thing.
This is such a great thing you say, because so often women are the one, the proactive, like, I'm working on the relationship, I'm communicating. What you just described, this is like the typical woman. And men are mostly super quiet and they don't say much. Now, can you talk to me more about, before you came up with the list, so in the months and years before that, where you obviously had those things that you were not super happy about, why you never said something?
So my awareness was that I did not, how do I say this? So these things would have bugged me, but I couldn't see them yet. It was like my eyes could not perceive them. I would know I was bugged by something, and I would have this background sense of anger, resentment, frustration, anxiety. But that background sense, because I had the idea that I was the broken one, I just attributed to, it's just me being broken. And so in that dynamic, all of these symptoms of my anxiety, nervousness, resentment toward her were just getting bucketed into, well, you're just avoidant, or you don't want to talk about whatever. Like, there's just all of these symptoms being lumped into the wrong conclusion. And so I couldn't even see that these things were the things bugging me. And so I'm guessing for a lot of men whose partners are pointing at them saying, you're just avoidant, you're just this, you're just that, they probably have this same feeling and are just saying, well, it's because I'm broken and screw this lady, So yeah, it's that the symptoms didn't even ping as a potential her problem.
And there's something else I think I've noticed too, in just talking to clients or male friends. I think as well, many men don't necessarily have the vocabulary or the practice of being able to name what they're experiencing. They don't have the language, having done so much work and like being really clear. Wait. Okay, I'm feeling fear and I'm feeling anger at the same time. Like, having done so much work to be able to notice and name is one of the most powerful things, but many people, men and women, never learn that. And so what they experience is these bodily sensations, but without the practice of naming what they're experiencing. I just feel bad. I just feel awful. I just feel, whatever label, bad, awful, like crap, I need to get away. Like, it's just some words that they slap on top of the sensations that they're not able to name, which might result in, I need to just get away and be able to breathe because I can't breathe. Instead of going, I'm feeling really angry that you are calling me this name over and over. Can we talk about it? It's like overwhelm, shut down, I need to get away. And so I think also some of it is without that ability to know what's going on internally, to name it and have the vocabulary to express it and communicate it, and then the safety in a relationship to communicate it to someone else who will receive it, then for many people, it just stays a big hodgepodge of messy, uncomfortable stuff that they need a glass of wine or smoke some pot or go away for a boys' weekend or whatever to try and not feel this anymore. And so instead of it being something that comes up and can be used to heal a problem in a relationship, it's something that gets repeatedly pushed down because there's no ability to name it and share it.
And in addition to that, like, at least in my experience, there was a sense of frustration at the amount of conversations we were already having about emotions.
Yeah.
Now, all of those emotions were being brought up by her. And so in my experience, I was just like, the last thing I want to talk about is more emotions. I'm fine. I'm good. Just please no more. Like, please no more conversations about emotions. And I think many, I would at least say men in my position, would have this assumption that I'm good, just please let's not have more emotional conversations. Please, I'm good. But what they're not realizing is that the reason that so many of these emotional conversations coming from her are coming up is because they're not saying the emotion that keeps getting repressed over here. So having these conversations about these emotions could actually make these happen less. So it's this idea that, I don't know, it would just add more to the pile as opposed to take away some of the pile. And so for me, it's just like, the last thing I want to do is have more emotional conversations.
This is why there are so many out there, they say something like, I cannot give you what you want.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what I do, it's not enough. And I'm like, oh my God.
I've heard it at home as well. So but the thing is, guys, so yesterday, I had like a spontaneous argument at home over nothing. Or kids, like just nothing. And the interesting thing is, in the argument, we were both figuring out what was actually bothering each other and going on for us. So it was just like a rolling process in the argument. And sometimes you need those arguments just to have that adrenaline and trigger to start digging into what's going on.
Yeah.
Also for him. And this is what I noticed yesterday. It was in the beginning, he didn't knew what was going on for him. But then as I brought it up and then we started, and I was like, okay, so actually makes sense, your logics. But you communicated? No.
And I would say one of the coolest things that has been part of, I would say, the progression of our relationship is that in the beginning, like starting with God, when I broke up with him, it would take these explosions for us to have these conversations. And it like with so much pushing down and not being able to connect or know what's bothering me or going, no, I'm fine. Like, or I should be fine. That shouldn't bother me. And disconnecting and judging what was really there. It took a level 8 or 9 or 10, and then all this adrenaline, and this is what's happening. And now what's wild, and we're in this stage where like noticing the 5s and the 6s, and then noticing the 2s and the 3s, and then getting to this point where I'm like, I think the other day I noticed something like a 0.5, and I'm like, I just want to name this before it becomes a problem, or could you give me a different perspective? It's like the tiniest little blip on a radar that I wouldn't have had any awareness before, and it feels like I'm this like sensitive sonar now that notices like, oh, I didn't like how you said that in the last sentence. And then we're just adjusting things as we notice these small little things within ourselves that aren't big deals. Level 1 frustration, level 1, like, I didn't like how that sounded. And when we can speak to those, there's no 8 or 9 or 10 blow-ups. There's nothing huge that is like a conflict between us. We might have things we still get to work on within ourselves, but it's really changed how that sense of we don't need to have the big conflicts anymore.
But to get there, you have to go through the 8s or 9s or 10s consistently. Like it starts at an 8 or 9 or 10, then you can get to where you detect it at a 6, then you get to where you detect it at a 4, then you get to where you detect it at a 2. But it took a lot of the back and forth, unfun fights to get to that point.
Yeah. So interesting to me, just like a few minutes ago, I said like, well, but Evan was actually leading this whole journey. Even when the leading was a pause, a break, even this was a leading. And then we said, yes, I was asking. I
totally filtered it through. Yes, I was.
We've got different definitions of leading.
Yeah. It reminds me, I was years ago in a leadership training. And one of the kind of the assignments we had is you just do pairs and then you touch the hands to each other, and then the one is leading and then the other is leading. My feminine brain was like, let me just try to have an equal distribution, typical woman. And then in the feedback round, this guy told me, look, I was letting you lead for as long as I wanted. So actually, I think I was the one leading because I was very consciously giving you the space and then taking it back. And I was like, interesting. Yep. It's kind of, this is what I noticed. And the other thing which came to my mind is how hard for us is to actually surrender. I mean, for us as women. And there is this massive submissive women thing on the internet. It was a few years ago. Now it's kind of not that popular anymore. But this whole submission, if you look at it, it sounds awful. But there is, in the sense of surrendering, there is a lot of beauty there, actually. And a lot of trust and so many great things. It's a journey there. For everyone.
I feel like Erin would have an interesting take on this, so I'm very curious to hear.
No, it's been part of my journey. And a lot of what we have found is when we have been stuck in a certain way, part of our journeys together and as individuals is like we'll swing to the other end and go, oh, I don't like this. This doesn't work at all. And then we kind of come back to the middle. And so as someone who has been hyper masculine with my energy my whole life, and it's like, I'm alone, I'm doing this on my own, I have to make everything happen. I'm the founder of this company. I'm the founder of this company. Everybody's looking to me. I make the decisions. If I don't do anything, I'm not going to be okay. Like I have to make everything happen. And then I have the capacity to do a lot. It was terrifying to start hearing this concept of what happens if you don't force things. Then I'm like, then absolutely nothing will ever happen. And I'll lay on the ground and my whole life will collapse. And so trying to find like what surrender actually looks like and how it doesn't mean giving up, dreaming or desiring certain things and allowing things to unfold while still it's like not never taking action. It's been quite a process to explore and test what that looks like. Because there were lots of times, for example, when he wasn't reading the book and I'm like, I'm supposed to surrender and not make anything happen. So I can't remind you to read the damn book that you said you were going to read. So what am I doing? I'm sitting in the corner and then I get resentful and then I'm angry. So this is what surrender looks like, is just being angry because nothing's happening because I'm not making it happen. And it was very confusing because I was trying to adjust to that. And I think I am still in process of landing and understanding that middle area of breaking out of a lifetime of trying to force results to happen,
I mean, reference to the meaning exploration method, by the way. Just to quick reference to that. But I'm just going to go back to my question. How do you actually reconnect? I mean, you had this massive conversations, multiple series of conversations. Were you feeling romantic in the process, or did you start feeling more romantic later?
What are you asking? Very different answers.
I'm asking both of you.
My experience was that I was exploring all of this with him to see if there would be a romantic relationship, because we still had this like best friends, super connected, soulmate connection. Like we're with each other every single day and we're both seeming to be committed to each other and care about each other and we're our favorite people in the world. And we have everything and all of the elements of a romantic relationship except for the romantic part. And I was finding that I told myself that I could tolerate and do that and that would be fine. And I just found out over time more and more and more, I was like, I can't, like, I'm in love with this guy. I can't do this. And it's not working for me. So me being in France and showing up to these conversations was me wondering, like, could this possibly work out? Like, I know where I'm at and I don't know what's going on over here. And hopefully if we address these issues and these distortions between us, perhaps something could shift. So that was my take the whole time.
And mine was slightly different. Mine was along the lines of, I really deeply love this human being and I want her in my life. And yet I want what is in the highest and best good for both of us. That is the thing that I ultimately want. Like if that's dating, cool. If that's friendship, cool. If that's not talking, okay. But what I want is the highest and best outcome for both of us. And so as I was working through this, my idea was I need to get rid of what I would call distortions in the field between her and I need to get rid of the distortions that are making this current outcome feel so terrible, and to find whatever these distortions are. And then whatever outcome we reach, as long as we reach it cleanly, I feel good. And so we had very different approaches to solving the problem. We had very different ideas of how to get there. But eventually, I think it became, through all of the conflict that we had in France, it became obvious that there was still a lot for us to learn in romance. That, I don't know, that seemed to be, for me at least, it was like, well, I'm going to give this another shot.
Yeah, and we had different definitions of what success looked like. Like I was like, I would like to date this. I know I'd like to date this person. And then the entire time he was like, no, I just want what's in our best interest, without that same definition. So there were times when I would be sad after a conversation because it didn't seem like we were moving forward toward this. And he goes, this is great for how we're relating and connecting. And I'm like, but it's not moving us forward towards that. By itself was also quite challenging too.
So she wanted the outcome of dating and I wanted the feeling of it feels good, regardless of what, or the process, I would call it. Like she wanted the outcome of dating, and I wanted whatever option feels the best. And so just different ways of solving it.
I mean, are you dating now? What's the current situation?
We are dating now. Yeah.
Okay. How do you figure out? I mean, for you, Erin, obviously you wanted to date him, so it's kind of transparent, clear. But how did you come to the conclusion? So, from all the different options, like staying friends, nothing at all, be dating, all the different options, what was the thing that brought you to the point of actually, I want to date?
There were a number of things. I think one of the bigger ones, candidly, was there's a book called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow. And that book showed me a lot of my past relationships with women and how they broke down. And they broke down not because of the woman herself necessarily, but because of the way we were in relationship together, I'll say. And there's a lot of information in that book that I would highly recommend to any man who's gotten sick of women very quickly, especially after hooking up the first couple of times. That book really, it was like, okay, I guess I've been doing things kind of wrong the whole time. And from that standpoint, all of a sudden we started to see our relationship through the light of, maybe it just broke down because of this. Basically, it talks about there's a difference between a mating program and a bonding program. And when, typically for a man, when they will run a mating program, what that means is I want to spread my seed and then I need to leave. Spread seed, leave. And this mating program is something that happens as a result of having an orgasm. And so when a man has an orgasm, their life force gets basically drained in the orgasm. And then their body says, hey, time to find a new spot. Like, it's time to find a new spot. And what ends up happening over time is that there's kind of two things that happen. One is that the man starts to associate the woman with draining my life force. When my life force, it's always her that drains my life force. So that kind of subconsciously happens. But then additionally, that's the mating program. There's also the bonding program. The bonding program actually increases oxytocin between the partners, which is the love hormone, the caring hormone. Now, if you're in the mating program, you're running on dopamine and you're looking for novelty, more stimulus, more stimulation. If you're in the oxytocin program, the bonding program, you're actually becoming closer to the human being. Now, what happened was because we were using the mating program, over time, I became resentful of her for draining my life force. And then we would have, because my dopamine system is getting all jacked up by orgasm, which they talk about in the book, I'm getting moody, she's getting moody, and then my amygdala is sensing friction in the relationship and saying, hey, there is danger in the relationship. The relationship is a pain in the butt, not the orgasm, which is causing all of this friction downstream of it. So it's very challenging to explain just in a one-off conversation, but essentially my amygdala was saying, hey, this thing that's actually coming from the orgasm is coming from that human. Run away from that human and go get more orgasms. But the actual problem is the orgasm is causing all of this friction, and I just needed to change the way I relate to the human.
Yeah.
Is that
Dopamine?
Yeah.
And oxytocin, yeah.
And so often for men that have run the mating program, what it looks like is I have these rose-colored glasses until I hook up with someone. And then as soon as I hook up with them, they're gone. No desire. I'm good. Or I can hook up with them 2, 3, 4, 8 times. And then around that time, I'm like, time to find a new one, I think. So looking at the relationship between her and I, it was obvious that I was running the mating program, which is very different than the bonding program. And so as we started to look at that, we're like, well, okay, maybe we try the bonding program and see what happens. I don't think so, but we are exceptionally closer than we were any time in our relationship before as a result of changing between the mating program to the bonding program.
I hear you. Tantra says, like in the first half an hour of having sex, you're actually draining energy, both of you. And then after 30 minutes, you start creating energy together. So it's about like the duration of literally the body to body contact, which is again about hormones and so many other things as well. But just from an energetic standpoint, what I'm also hearing, and I need to be careful, in the modern lifestyle, we are so not aware and not educated about ramping up our feminine energy. And I'm really speaking purely about the energy in our body and not just the behavior and stuff. And I can speak even for myself. So before I got kids, I was doing a lot of that. Now I got kids and I have a dozen other priorities. and I'm just not taking care of really filling up my vessel the way I used to do before kids. And especially when you have kids, you have even more drains. So like they're draining you as well. So you need actually a bigger vessel. But the whole thing is this modern society is not really educated about how to do it for women. And that's why we have aggressive men, because this is suiting energetically a man down. And that's why we have arguments and divorces and so many things. And that's why I say I need to be careful what I say, because there will be enough women who will not agree and who will be like, I want to be equal. I want to wear jeans and be a lawyer. And sure, you can be a lawyer, but you can still take care of your energy. So this is the whole point. What you say makes a lot of sense. And you know what's the funny thing is? I got the book as well. And I haven't read it, but I opened, I think, like 5 different spots, and I read like a third of a page in 5 different spots. And I got 5 times the exact same message. And also, the first time I was triggered, like, this book is just one big repetition. And then I started thinking, maybe there is a message for me. I didn't see any of what you described. So this was obviously not the message for me. What I saw in those really 5 probes on the book, I read the same message, which is you need to have a regular contact with your partner in order to produce oxytocin. And then something about the other message was like, we got kids and then we kind of forget. And I'm like, are we talking about the same book?
So those things, I don't even remember in that book. That's the wildest part. I'm like, that's in that book?
Okay, I have one more question for you if you feel like sharing. Erin mentioned to me there was a lady hitting on you. Do you want to share that story? Do you feel like sharing?
So the way I would describe it is I have been looking at moving to a new city. And in looking at moving to that new city, I made a couple of friends, and they were both female. And then what I noticed was in our interrelating, I started to feel flirting from one of them. I was like, ooh, I kind of like that. So there's a part of me that is like excited and, I like being flirted with by cute chicks. Also, though, I just committed to being monogamous with Erin. But basically, the way I've been seeing it is that these types of situations are little hurdles and challenges to my psyche. In the past, when I would have been flirted with a cute chick, my favorite thing to do was just keep it open, be indirect, be flirted with for more and be desired, I think. A part of me that really just wanted to feel loved and handsome and whatever. And so at every step of the process have been these little moral questions of like, well, do I tell this chick directly or do I just keep it open or do I be indirect and cut this off? And the answer was, I have to be direct with her and just say, hey, I just committed to being with someone I really love. Like, as much as I think you're awesome and I want to be your friend and I want to be friends in this new city, I also am not open for this part. And then the challenge became, okay, well, does this something I get to tell Erin? Like, do I hide this from Erin or do I tell this to Erin in the hope of strengthening our relationship? Because there was a part of me that was excited by it. There was a part of me that was scared about being excited about it. There was a part of me that's like, do I even have to tell you? My sense of it was like, well, it felt like an energetic leakage in our container. And so to not speak to her about it, to me, adds distortion between the two of us. And if I'm saying that I really care about her and us, my first priority should be avoiding adding distortion to the field between the two of us. And if there is distortion in that field, pulling it out. So I don't know how much you want to go into it, but that's kind of the broad strokes.
Thanks a lot for sharing, because it's just great to know what's going on in the mind of a man. And I mean, some women will argue, but I actually think women are the same. Like, there's no big difference here, I guess. But what I'm hearing and what I personally feel excited about is you have reached a level where you're like, oh, there is an energetic leakage. And the best thing to do is to talk about it. And for me, this is the exciting bit, because this talks about how much safety you have between each other, how much connection you have. Otherwise, you wouldn't probably do it. You wouldn't feel safe to do it. You'll be like,
Yeah. And I think we talked in the first episode about both of our primary goals in this is to learn. And if that is the primary goal, then having a scary conversation is probably the thing that needs to happen, because the fact that I'm scared by it means there's something for me to learn in it. There's something for me underneath the fear. And so if we're having a relationship that is meant to be intimate over time, it requires being willing to break intimacy to say something scary and to say, hey, I actually felt excited to be flirted with by a cute chick. And I actually I don't know if I want to have her in my life as a friend or if I just cut her out. But so being willing to say from a vulnerable place, like these things that feel scary, as long as it's in the interest of, hey, I'm trying to be as intimate as possible with you, it changes the dynamic from like, I should hide this to, I think if I share it, it actually makes us more intimate.
Did it make you feel more intimate as a result?
Yes, there were a number of different emotions prior to getting there. Like,
the nice thing about this kind of stuff is when she says there are a number of emotions prior to getting there, what she's saying in a sense is like some of her stuff got to come up in a really big way. Just like some of my stuff of wanting to keep my options open and wanting to flirt and not really being fully committed to something and wanting to shop around. Like this same stimulus of a cute girl flirting with me allowed those three issues of mine to all come up and come to the table and get resolved, as well as her big things that were coming to the table, not because we're broken, but because there's still emotions in us from past stuff.
It sounds to me a little bit like the test. The universe, like you just leap into something, next level of whatever, and then you get the test of the universe, like, are you really meaning it? I really want to be there on that level. And then it's really like the test of the universe. And you see it in so many different contexts, but this is how I see it from the
Feels that
side.
way.
And that's why you got something pop up for you. You got something pop up for you, just as another invitation to integrate. And I can tell you, I'm now with Jochen, with my husband. We are now 5.5, 6 years together. It's constantly something is coming up. It's the regular process. For us specifically, kids have been a huge trigger, which has nothing to do with the relationship, but it's kind of like coming in a way. Another quite important thing I was also thinking and reflecting from the last time is like your ability to process everything you speak has to do with something of what you work. Because you're both coaches, you're working in healing, you're not afraid to touch the topic. You're just touching it, you're going there. Would you just mind sharing where people can find you? What are you doing? What are your plans? Do you have ideas for the future?
oh my goodness, I would say, well, I will speak for myself. I am in a massive transition period of my life where with all of these shifts in how I relate, in how I think and how I see the world and my consciousness, and in my new requirement for myself to be completely authentic in all the ways, am actually transitioning out of the company that I founded, say, 8 or so years ago, where there was a focus on coaching entrepreneurs, high achievers, high performers, and helping them get unstuck and breaking down barriers. We did 3 to 12 month coaching programs and then quarterly retreats as well. And this will be the final year of that phase for me. And I have a couple opportunities that I'm exploring, pursuing now, that suddenly, as I started to allow and be more in my feminine, like things that have showed up that never would have in the past. And I'm seeing things differently and I'm doing work differently. So that is happening. And then as we're continuing to relate, we're having these opportunities and experiences just starting where we're going like, wait, what if we could do this? What if we explored this possibility over here? We just did a private retreat this weekend for someone who had been around us and seen what it was like to be around us and said, I don't know what that is, but I want more of that. Can I pay you to spend an entire day with me and teach me all of these things? So we just finished our first kind of private retreat. Instead of using all of the coaching techniques we've known for all of these years, it was just us being us and communicating. And we didn't do any like actual modalities or work. We were just being us. And this person is raving and said it was phenomenal. And it was so fun for us. So just in the last 24 hours, there have been like, what if we do more of this? So I'm in an exploration phase and pulling on some different threads to see what feels good for the next phase.
It's really fun because we see the world in opposite directions, like from here and here, when you know how two eyes create three dimensions in the real world, like there's something very interesting when both of our consciousnesses look at something. Yeah.
Especially what I'm hearing is you use your skill set, but you apply it intuitively. This is what I heard. Because, you cannot erase 8 years of experience healing from your mind. You just can't.
It's interesting though, because so much of the focus previously was on, we learned, this technique and this modality and trained under this person and did this. And when you show up to a session, we're going to be doing this to you and we're taking you through this process. And like none of that has been around. Like all of that has everything that previously made a living on, like that's not even being used anymore. Perhaps it's an amalgamation of all these different pieces and awarenesses now that have led us to here. But it's interesting showing up without the full tool belt and just being like, hey, it's just me.
So what I would love to do is I would love to share at least your Instagram if somebody wants to chat with you.
But my Instagram is just my name. And if someone wants to take a look at the work that we have been doing and that is still around for another half a year, it's mindfixgroup.com. That's where someone can find me online.
I think you're literally entering a whole new era of helping people by taking all the like logical structured thing and starting to apply it intuitively. I think this is a complete like a leap.
And frankly, I think one of the more fun aspects of this. So we talked about how we were just conflict after conflict after conflict, and every conflict we would find these interrelating patterns which were nasty and were not super fun for us and were causing a bunch of pain between the two of us. And what's been interesting is, so having both had very different modalities, approaches to helping people in the past, we would work with the person and we would say, hey, what's going on in here? And now we're looking at it very differently. And most of the issues, so one of my favorite things, and I think Erin's as well now, is working with couples, because in a couple, you can see, you don't have to believe what they're saying are the problems. You can see it. You can see exactly what's happening. We can see all of our fucked up interrelating patterns that we had. Like, no, there's that, there's this, there's that, there's this here it is, right there, gotcha. So all of these fights, all of this energetic clearing, all of this, whatever you want to call it, plus the past coaching work has led to this insane ability to just be like, this, stop it, that, this. And to be able to see it in a way that the seeing is the valuable portion, not all the efforting. And so it's really fun. But yeah, so you're right. It's different.
This sounds exciting. I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you.
Like, completely. Oh my gosh. And you know what? I so appreciate how you make it sound like the easiest thing in the world. Oh, we just do this. Oh, we just transition to intuitive coaching. Like, oh, I'm just able to see. Like, I've been doing this, and I can tell you how long it takes so that you're just able to see. Like, so it's really interesting how you kind of don't take the credit for like this is freaking hard work. If you think of your 8 years of what you have been doing in the previous high achievers coaching niche, how many people, high caliber people with probably a lot of stuck patterns, a lot of very firm beliefs about life, you have been able to to shift.
Hundreds. Yeah.
If you just think about.
Yeah, hundreds. It's been a lot of effort.
In thinking about it though, again, my brain like takes these big nebulous things that seem huge and breaks things down into smaller pieces. As I reflect on it, almost everything, so much of the healing work, the results we have experienced, and then the help that we provide to other people starts with the word like self-awareness, like people being able to notice. So many people run around going, I'm fine. I'm not angry. I'm okay with this. To get people to connect to themselves and realize they're angry, they're upset, they're terrified, they're scared, like noticing what they are experiencing, being able to name it, and then being able to express it. Like those three things over and over is almost like what so much of this is about. And it sounds so simplistic and so kindergartenish, but what happens over a lifetime of trauma and patterns and getting yelled at and abuse and toxicity and survival strategies and what we were rewarded for, keeping quiet, not being honest, saying what wasn't real, saying we're fine when we're not, pushing our feelings down. A lifetime of those things gets us to a place some people don't even know what they're feeling. Other people know it but will never say it. And then other people don't want to say it to the person they need to say it to or have a safe place to say it. And that it feels like those are the three gates where people get stuck. And working through those sounds simple. Of course, I can tell I'm angry and I'll say it. But when you really get down to it, there's a lot of fear and stories mixed up in that. And so much of what we were doing, like I didn't even know or couldn't say until 4 months in that I really wanted to have this be romantic. I was saying over and over, as long as I can get a little bit of physical touch, I'm fine. I wasn't even connected or allowing myself to say what I really wanted because it seemed too scary and I was scared he would go away if I would say the thing. I didn't even know that within me.
So she mentioned the three things to the self-awareness. There's one above that though that needs to happen, because for every person that hears that, they go, "Oh, I'm self-aware. That's not me." Like every single person says, "I'm self-aware. That's not my problem." But inherently, the only reason we have problems with another person is because we're lacking self-awareness. To acknowledge first that we might be much less self-aware than we think is the first, and it's like a really humbling step, because we've even been doing it the last week. It's a game of like, it continues to happen.
Yeah.
But the first step is being willing to admit I might be much less self-aware than I think I am.
Which, I mean, if you're happy, like, you don't have to go there
Yeah.
if there's no reason, right? Just live through life and you're not aware and you're happy. But as soon as you're not, then you have to. Thank you so much for having that conversation. This was absolutely a pleasure and an honor.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
To have you.